when people say, I need to get an Uber, they're not saying I need to get a broad technology platform capable of many different things. They're saying a driver with a car.
Exactly.
So what are they talking about?
From point A to point B. This is one of these ludicrous legal arguments that is just comical from a common sense perspective. Of course, the drivers and the driving experience of actually transporting you from point A to point B is core to the business. That is the whole business. If it's a bad experience, no one's ever going to use it, no matter how good the technology is. So it's ludicrous. I think the general thing that is going on here is that this is California's approach to this phenomenon that we're seeing again and again, which is technology companies are increasingly just focusing on just one value point in the overall chain. They are taking the lion's share of the value for themselves and a very small group of shareholders, and they're suddenly leaving, in this case, tens of thousands of people with $9 to $16 an hour, and that's all they get. And I don't know that they necessarily have to be employees, but if we want our economy to work, we need to share more of the value with the people who actually do the work.
I understand what they're trying to do here. They need to mount some kind of legal argument, have a hedge. But do you think they have reputational risk here? Because this argument sounds like Travis Kalanick Uber, right, arguing to get its own way, more than it sounds like this new, enlightened, love the drivers,
yes,
help everyone Uber. Do they have some risk?
Huge reputational risk, and it's why they've started to get out in front of it by saying, hey, we're going to go for a minimum wage of $21, we're going to provide benefits, we're going to provide sick leave, but don't make us make them employees yet, because that comes with all of such other things. So if they do that, that's actually a good, positive step. $21 an hour, if that is the actual wage you get after all of your costs are factored out, okay. Not a living wage in California in certain places, but certainly a much better wage than $9.
Don't you think this is just getting, I mean, we can use the example of this regulation in California and Uber and Lyft, but don't you think, use the word platform, don't you think this is just getting at the bigger, broader debate that is brewing around tech and regulation right now anyway? This idea, whether it is Uber, whether it's Airbnb, whether it's Facebook, this idea of we're the platform, we're not responsible for what's happening with the use of that platform.
This is the Silicon Valley mantra. It is why the Silicon Valley and the New York, in particular, media market, it's like oil and water. Hey, we're just the telephone company. You do what you want. We have no responsibility for that. And what's happening with all of the companies, like Facebook and others, is the companies are realizing, actually, we are responsible for what happens. And so, in this case, to John's point, this is a holistic service that is being offered. There's no issue with hiring people to do part-time work. They don't have to be full-time employees, but ultimately more of the value needs to be shared with the people who do the work.
Well, if you're a believer in their long-term plan, that the driver really is extracted from the process, maybe that would be true then, one day,
but
if
this
ever.
is this ludicrous dream that in a few weeks or months we're going to wake up and we're not going to have any drivers anymore because it's all self-driving. This is decades away, except in extremely limited, closed-circuit things where it's a bus that does exactly the same route around thing. This idea that cars are just going to be driving all over the place in a few years, it's so far off we don't even need to think about it now.
I would argue the other side of it is that if drivers weren't core to the platform, they'd have no need to automate because it wouldn't make that big a difference.
There you go. There you go. It's a ludicrous legal argument, but maybe technically, legally, they can make it and avoid doing the right thing, ultimately.
My question here is, and this is probably nearer term than automation, but if this ends up pushing prices higher, is there a tipping point at which consumers don't actually want to take Ubers or Lyfts or some of these other ride-sharing platforms?
Based on what we've seen in the past, price is a factor. It does affect demand. But I would respectfully suggest that there's a lot of value. People love Uber and Lyft. There's a reason they took over everywhere. And modest price increases from here, maybe there's a little bit of a depression of demand, but it's still way more convenient than the old world where there were few taxis and they were never there when you wanted them and you needed to call. This is much more convenient and better.